I don't know about you, but sometimes I feel completely overwhelmed with the number of different fragrance brands I see discussed on YouTube. And actually trying niche fragrance is difficult. You can't just walk into a shop and try them generally. You have to order a sample kit. You have to make an active decision to go and seek out those fragrances, unless you've got some lovely friends who send you some samples. So in this video, I've picked 7 niche fragrance brands and I've picked one fragrance to try from each of those brands. And I'm just going to discuss them. I'm going to say what I think, whether I like them or not. And also I'm going to rank the fragrance houses at the end of the video in the order at which they've piqued my interest. Has it been something that I've really enjoyed, or is it something that I'm really not bothered about? So if you haven't seen me before, I'm Claire Smith and I make videos all about perfume and also some videos about perfume science. So if that interests you, then please consider subscribing, and also please like this video if you do like this video. So let's get on with trying some different fragrances. So the first brand I'm going to talk about is Maison France's Kurkdjian, and I really haven't tried much from MFK. I've tried the Extrait version of Bacarrat Rouge 540, and I could talk about that one in this video, but I'm not going to. So the fragrance I'm going to try from MFK is actually Petit Matin, and Petit Matin is one that I was sent by Emily. So thank you very much for letting me try your fragrance. So this one is a very soft lemony fragrance, and actually at the beginning it's quite soapy. And my initial impression of it was it was quite relaxing and gentle actually. It's one that isn't a beast mode fragrance. It does have good longevity and it does protect a little bit, but you're not going to knock anybody out. It's not a Baccarat Rouge kind of fragrance. My second impression of the fragrance was that it actually smells very much like one of those towelettes you get in Indian restaurants when you've finished eating your meal and you're cleaning your hands. It really does smell very much like the lemon in those towelettes, and I quite like that smell actually. It's quite a clean smell, and yeah, it made me think of those. I think probably just because it's kind of lemony and it's also got that sort of slight soapiness about it. I think the soapiness is probably coming from the lavender that's listed. I don't really smell anything that resembles lavender, but I think that must be where the soapiness is coming from. I think as this fragrance dries, it does get a little bit muskier. It also gets slightly powdery and maybe a little bit salty even, or perhaps even a little bit woody. But it is overall quite a linear fragrance. What you get at the beginning is pretty much what you're going to get several hours down the line, and several hours down the line is definitely the thing with this fragrance. It is something that does last a long time and you will smell it throughout the day. It's quite nice to wear, it's quite refreshing, quite relaxing. Something that I think could really be a signature fragrance actually, this one. It's quite distinctive, but it doesn't really sort of scream at you. So overall, did I like this fragrance? Yeah, I did like this fragrance. I wouldn't say it's a love. I don't think the notes are very me. I think that's it. But I am interested in trying other ones from this brand from trying this one. So that's Petit Matin, and Petit Matin is £165 for 70ml. So the second fragrance brand that I'm going to try a perfume from is Parfums de Marly. So Parfums de Marly are just everywhere on YouTube, aren't they? You just see the bottles all over the place because they are so pretty. They just look like something you'd want to pick up. So I'd never tried any Parfums de Marly fragrances, and actually Paola Bianca was kind enough to send me a sample of Meliora. And my impression of Meliora is that it's a really fruity and soapy perfume to begin. So it really made me think of those raspberry 90s soaps that were in Body Shop. That's the scent memory I had of picking those soaps up and sniffing them in Body Shop. I always wanted to take a soap home. I was obsessed with soap as a child. And yeah, that just took me straight back to those shops in the 90s. So after I got over that sort of like raspberry soapiness in the beginning, it does actually turn into more of a blackcurrant fragrance. And as it dries, it becomes deeper and more fruity. There's some kind of soft pink light rose as well as the blackcurrant in the fragrance. This fragrance is really deliciously sweet, but in a quite a grown-up way. It's not like super sweet, but it's definitely got a sweetness about it. I feel like this one is really a very crowd-pleasing fragrance. I feel like people would struggle to dislike this. It is something that maintains that soapiness throughout the fragrance though, and I think if that bothers you, you might not like this. As the fragrance dries further, it gets a little bit woodier, but actually that deeper, darker blackcurrant and the raspberry still make me think of travel sweets and tins. It also has something vaguely tropical about this fragrance in the dry down, and I also think of pineapple sweets as well, pineapple hard candies, as well as those travel sweets with the more berry fruits. So what did I think of this fragrance? Well, I liked it. I think it, it's a very approachable fragrance. It's not challenging in the slightest. It is something that I would feel like wasn't maybe me, because it is so girly and pretty, and I don't know, just it lacks any kind of depth for me, this fragrance. But I see why people like it. It is very crowd pleasing, and I think most people would struggle to dislike this fragrance. I really do enjoy it. So that's Meliora, and Meliora is £210 for 75ml. So the next fragrance brand I'm going to try a fragrance from is Olfactive Studio, and the fragrance that I'm going to try is Autoportrait. So Autoportrait is a beautifully fresh, clean, but also strangely warm and woody fragrance. It's a really nice balance, this fragrance, and I don't really know how they've managed to make it both fresh and warm at the same time. It's something I quite like to smell on my husband as well. I think he would be happy to share this one with me. I think the reason I like this fragrance is that it's quite gentle, and it's not beast mode. It's not something that's super strong. And I just think that it's got a very sort of roundedness to it. It doesn't feel sharp in any way. There's nothing that really stands out in this fragrance. I think it's something that is very neutral in a way, but it is also interesting. So this fragrance is actually quite a limey fragrance to me, a very gentle, soft lime. And I think that's probably coming from the resins, because I don't think lime's listed. I think it's bergamot that's listed, but to me it smells more limey. So the resins in this, they are numerous, and I think that's what gives it that kind of warm character to it. But it also does have that citrus edge that keeps it fresh, and the citrus actually stays throughout. As this fragrance dries, it gets woodier, there's cedar in there. And when the fragrance is fully dried down, the vetiver comes in. You get that kind of dry feeling that you get from vetiver fragrances. So what do I think to this fragrance? I think it's very nice. I think it's something that is very much on all occasion neutral kind of fragrance, definitely a signature fragrance. And I actually think that I would wear this one. I think this is a very casual kind of fragrance. This is a jeans kind of fragrance to me, a casual t-shirt kind of fragrance. It's just very clean smelling, it's very tomboy, it's just very me. And I think trying this one has made me want to try others from this fragrance brand. And Autoportrait is priced at £130 for 100ml. So the next fragrance brand that I'm going to talk about is Jardin. And Jardin is a brand that have really high ethical and sustainable standards. That's what I like about this brand. And they're actually a brand I have a few fragrance samples from, but I've gone to the one that I tried first because Paula sent me this sample and then Emily sent me this sample. So actually between those two samples there's slight differences, and I don't know whether they've reformulated this fragrance, but the openings are quite different between the two samples. So I'm going to talk about the more recent sample rather than the one I got from Paula. So Tiger by her side is an ambery, slightly spicy, definitely slightly leathery, patchouli based fragrance. I think if you don't like patchouli, don't bother. You're not going to enjoy this one. And if you don't like leather, I wouldn't bother with this one either. So I remember trying this from Paula's sample and not really enjoying it. I think that's because the opening in Paula's sample was very dusty and very heavy on cinnamon. But actually the sample that I've got from Emily is not like that at all. It doesn't really have any kind of distinctive cinnamon note in the beginning. It definitely doesn't have a dusty feel. It doesn't even feel vaguely powdery in the beginning. So this fragrance really starts out with quite a prominent spicy amber, and then as it dries it becomes more leathery and then slowly and progressively less leathery. And in the end you're just left with sort of an amber patchouli basically, with a very, very sort of slight warmth to it. In the end of the fragrance, it also smells a little bit gourmand in a way. It smells like a spicy, smoky toffee to me in the end. I'm not quite sure what's making me smell that, but that's what I smell. I don't know what to say about this one. It is quite an interesting fragrance, but I don't think this has really captured my heart. I don't think this one makes me want to jump up and buy it. I would be interested in trying other fragrances from Jardin though. I think that it has just a really nice ethos about the brand. I like the fact that they're trying to be sustainable. So the only thing I would say about this fragrance is that it's quite gentle. I think if you want something that is going to project, this probably isn't the one for you. It also didn't have the best lasting power on me, but that might be different on other people. So that's Tiger by Her Side by Jardin, and that's priced at £95 for 100ml. So the next brand that I'm going to try is actually Commodity. And Commodity are a bit of a weird one, aren't they? They sort of went under a couple of years ago and then they resurrected themselves. And now they've brought out these sampling kits where you can pick certain levels of fragrance intensity. So the one that I've chosen to try for this video is gold and at the expressive level. So that's the equivalent of the old version of gold before the brand shut down last time. So what do I think of gold? Well, I'd say that gold is a fragrance that opens quite freshly. It has a juniper note in it, and I assume that's what is giving it a very fresh feel in the opening. So as this dries, it becomes a warm woody vanilla, and actually the vanilla in this fragrance is not really that intense. It's something that's a little bit gentle. It really is quite a woody vanilla rather than a gourmand vanilla. And actually that's the kind of vanilla I quite like in fragrance. I do have Metal Wave by All Saints. And this fragrance really does remind me of Metal Wave. It makes me think that those fragrances are quite similar in a way, but I think Metal Wave is just slightly more interesting somehow. I don't really know how. I think probably because Metal Wave has that pencil shavings thing going on in the middle of the fragrance as well, and that just adds a little bit of interest. Also, Metal Wave feels a little bit more textured than the commodity fragrance. So I think just because I've tried those other woody vanillas, this one just didn't really excite me. And I think actually because I've tried those other woody vanillas as well, I just realised that there are other fragrances like this out there. It's quite a common DNA. It's something that you can probably find elsewhere and at a much lower price point than this commodity fragrance is priced at. So the price for the commodity gold fragrance is £120 for 100ml. So the next fragrance I'm going to try is one from Parle Moi, and Parle Moi is a brand that I actually have a lot of different fragrances from to sample, and I struggled to choose one for this brand because there's just so much to choose from in my sample collection, but I actually went for Mile High 38 because it's quite a different fragrance to the other ones in this video, and I thought that would be interesting. So Mile High 38 is, first of all, quite a rude sounding name, isn't it? I mean, what do you think of when you think of Mile High? I know what I think of. And I don't think that's anything to do with this fragrance. So this fragrance is quite a fruity fragrance. It really is pineapple in your face all the way. And actually the pineapple is quite rich, but it's never really cloying. It's not something that's sticky and sweet. It's something that's just kind of a fresh green pineapple, but it is still a little bit sweet. I think just because of the associations of pineapple in my mind, and also the base of this fragrance, which I think is listed as tonka, but to me it's just a very sort of sweet caramelized kind of base. It makes me think of pineapple cocktails. So it makes me think of rum and pineapple cocktails. And I know there's not rum in this fragrance, but that's just an association in my mind, I think. I think because of that, it makes me happy. It makes me think of being out with people and having cocktails and doing nice things like that and being in pubs and bars. And yeah, it just has a very sort of happy, summery, tropical feel about it. So yeah, I like this fragrance, and it does make me curious to try other fragrances from Parle Moi. And I know Parle Moi are a brand that are basing a lot of their fragrances around particular note profiles and scent ideas that are based basically around one note. One note is the star. And I kind of like that idea. I've said that before. I like that idea of fragrances. I like something being focused and having different personalities and different fragrances. So yeah, it's really made me interested in this brand, and I just think it's happy and joyous. I do think the price point of this brand is high. So the price point for this brand is something like £98 for 50ml. But my interest is peaked in Parle Moi. So the next brand I'm going to try is Atelier Cologne. So I don't know what's going on with Atelier Cologne. They've withdrawn from the US. They're kind of at the same time withdrawing from a lot of department stores in the UK. They just seem to be shrinking their catalogue as well. I noticed a lot of their fragrances have been discontinued. And I think actually the one that I've chosen for this video, Rose and Anonyme, is also one that has been discontinued. So Rose Anonyme to me is a very kind of heavy fragrance. It's something that I can't see myself wearing. So Rose Anonyme is a soapy, slightly bitter, leathery feeling patchouli fragrance that's obviously quite rosy. And the rose here is quite deep and dark. And it feels quite gothic, this fragrance. It definitely feels like it's something for Halloween. It really does have that deep darkness. And also there's oud in this fragrance, which I think is adding to that deep darkness. I think the thing I don't like about this fragrance really is the leatheriness with the patchouli. The leather here feels quite raw. I don't think there's actually leather listed in this fragrance, but that's really what I get from it, quite a raw leather. I think the thing I also don't like about this fragrance is that it's quite bitter. It's almost like somebody's taken a Rose Chypre fragrance with a lot of oak moss in it and mixed it with a really raw, leathery, oudy, patchouli fragrance. It's just a bit too much, and I just think it's quite a thick feeling fragrance. It just feels a bit heavy for me, but I can see why it's distinctive, and actually it makes me more interested to try more Atelier Cologne fragrances, because my impression of them from the other ones that I've tried has always been that they're quite light, they're quite fly by night, they're things that don't really stick around. So this one does stick around and it is quite strong. So the price point of this fragrance is £55 for 30ml or £99 for 100ml. And actually I think Atelier Cologne have very differential pricing on a lot of their fragrances. So that might not be something that's across the board with their fragrances. That might just be this one that's a little bit cheaper maybe, because I feel like Santal Carmin was really quite an expensive fragrance when I looked. I think it was in the hundreds for even a small one. So overall, I wouldn't buy this fragrance just because I don't like this particular one, but it hasn't put me off trying the rest of the brand. So that's Atelier Cologne's Rose Anonyme. So finally, as promised, I'm going to rank the fragrance houses by my level of interest in them. So number 7 is going to be, unfortunately, Commodity. I think Commodity as a brand is something that just doesn't really interest me. I think their underground kind of marketing tactics of giving people free kits and then having them not declare that they're actually been given for free in many cases has kind of put me off them as a brand, because it makes me feel like they're untrustworthy. And if you're a good brand, you don't need to do that. You need to, you would always try to make sure that people would declare that things were gifted, because that does influence reviews, and actually consumers can see straight through that. So I think that, and also the fact that gold was something that I've very much smelt before, has just made me less interested in trying more Commodity. But I still, I'm not going to rule them out. If I come across Commodity, I will always try them. Number 6 from this video is going to be Atelier Cologne. So I don't know what's going on with Atelier Cologne. As I've said, their disappearance from the US is slightly disappointing, and also their disappearance from many department stores here in the UK. I just feel like they're kind of messing around with their brand, and I didn't really like Rose Anonyme, and I think that whilst that might not be true across the board given my love for Santal Carmin, I just think that they've discontinued quite a lot of the fragrances, and that's annoyed me. But other than that, I would be open to trying more from their fragrance brand. Number 5 from this video would be Jardin. So Jardin, Tiger by Her Side just didn't really do it for me. I just didn't really like that fragrance as much as several of the other ones. Whilst I could appreciate that it was a good fragrance, it just didn't grab me. And I think, I am interested in trying a lot of their other fragrances, and I do like their kind of ethical and moral standards on fragrance production. So I probably will look into them just because of the sustainability of their fragrance brand. And I really applaud them for doing that. I think that's a really good thing for fragrance brands to be doing. So Jardin is number 5. The brand in 4th place from this video would be Olfactive Studio. And I think that's just because I really like that fragrance that I tried, Autoportrait. And it made me intrigued to know what other fragrances are out there. I've also tried Still Life from Olfactive Studio, and I don't like that one as much as Autoportrait. But I am still intrigued to try other ones from the range, and there are a few that pique my interest, so I will probably check them out in time. Number 3 was Parfum de Marly. So Parfum de Marly is really a brand that has never really interested me, but I get what people mean now when they say that Meliora is just a pretty fragrance, and it just is a pretty fragrance. You can't deny that it is pretty. And whilst it doesn't smell, anything out of the ordinary, I don't think it really justifies its price point. I wouldn't be adverse to trying more fragrances from Parfum de Marly, because if they're all as unchallenging as Meliora, I imagine they are all pretty crowd pleasing, and I probably will like them. So Parfum de Marly are number 3. Brand number 2 from this video is going to be MFK. So I think with MFK, I'm just intrigued to try to find one that I love. I know that people seem to have a very split opinion on MFK. they're either really into Bacarrat Rouge, or they really like Grand Soir, or they really like Oud Satin Mood. And there doesn't seem to be much crossover between the three of those. So I would like to investigate the brand further and try some more of their fragrances and see if there's one out there for me. I'm not sure there will be, but I want to have a look. And I think the thing I want to know about MFK is, do they all have very synthetic aroma chemicals going on in their fragrances? Because with Petit, Matin, I felt like there might be some ambroxan there because of that saltiness that I seem to smell. And I just want to know whether that's something that's throughout their brand or whether it's just that particular fragrance. And the fragrance that's piqued my interest most from the ones that I've tried today is Parle Moi. So I just really like that kind of fruitiness. My worry is that it is a little bit on the more basic side. Maybe it is too similar to those Mugler Eau Croisière kind of fragrances. But I think that Parle Moi, from my experience, have just done the fragrance really nicely and really well. I don't think I've ever smelt such a beautiful pineapple fragrance. It really is quite refreshing and uplifting and happy. And I love it when a fragrance makes me happy. So Parle Moi are in my #1 spot. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy the video, then please press the like button, and please also consider subscribing if you haven't done already. And please let me know which of these fragrance brands you've tried and which you would suggest that I check out in later videos. And also please let me know if you've got a favourite fragrance from any of these fragrance brands and what you think of the ones that I've tried. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.